What if I told you that this piece of paper is your story? A blank canvas, a fresh start, a space for your dreams, your goals, the life you imagine yourself. Maybe you don't know what to write yet. Maybe your vision isn't clear. Or maybe you've already mapped out every single step. Every box checked, every goal set in motion. Now think about a time in your life where everything seemed to be planned out. Maybe it was your job, your career, a relationship, or a project you had poured your heart into. You remember how that felt? And then, without warning, life did this. So, what now? What do you do when life rips up your plan? Most of us freeze because we thought we had control, a plan that makes us feel safe, and when the plan falls apart, it feels like we've lost control. But here's the truth. We never had control to begin with. I know this because I spend my life trying to control everything. I love lists. I make lists of my lists. I create sub-schedules for my schedules. And I even have reminders to check my reminders. And yet, life had other plans for me as well. Let me tell you a story of my first real job. The one that I thought was a dream come true. The application process has been pretty tough. There have been many applicants, a few rounds, and I was even flown in for the interviews. When I arrived in this giant hallway of the company, I thought, wow, beautiful decor, smiling faces all over, and I could literally smell innovation. So after I've been through all these different rounds, I was so relieved that I was done. But also after that, every day, I was waiting patiently by my phone for their call back. And then, 1 week later, I got a call. And I got the job. I got what I was asking for. So young 20-year-old me, full of excitement, packed all my stuff just to move from one end of the country to the other 3 weeks later. A few weeks into the job, though, my view has completely changed. What I found there was completely different to what I expected. Every day I walked into an office and people barely made any eye contact. The tension in the air was thick, like everyone was waiting for the other person to make a mistake. And I found myself in the cutthroat work culture where everyone was pointing fingers at each other just to climb up the ladder. But the most challenging part of it was actually my boss. A deeply narcissistic leader who put herself first, blamed me for her mistake, took credit for what I did, but worst of all, she made me feel like my voice didn't matter. And I'm honest, I struggled with this a lot, especially since this was my first job, and I didn't have any experience with that. But I'm also a black belt in karate, so I did what I was used to. Push through, keep going. Like I always did. But then one day, in the middle of all the chaos at work, the emotional turmoil inside of me intensified. Actually, the day had started like any other. I got up, packed my bag, went to the office, and diving into an Excel spreadsheet for a few hours, really focused. And then my phone rang. And sometimes you have this feeling that when your phone rings, you know that bad news is coming, right? And it was. It was my mom, my best friend, saying 3 words that shook me to my core. She said, "I have cancer." In that moment, my illusion kind of shattered. The belief that if I just worked hard enough, prepared well enough, life would just follow my plan. But life doesn't ask for our permission to change. And as you can expect, the reaction of my work environment was not as empathetic as I was wishing for. So I made the decision a few years later, and I decided to escape toxic work environments. So I faced another challenge, and this time it was not about my job, but about my own dream, my own business. So I worked day and night, and I put in a lot: work, time, energy, and money. And then 1.5 years later, it failed. And I found myself on the floor crying, because this wasn't the first time that I learned that discipline alone doesn't always guarantee success. And funny enough, this also wasn't the first time that I learned that. I've already learned it years before on the mat. I was training relentlessly for a big championship in karate, day in and day out. And then one day, before the big championship, I lost hearing. Just like that. This time, it was not my mind, not my business, but my body really shutting down. And that's when I learned something profound. Control was never about predicting the future. It was about adapting when the unexpected happens. And in this moment, I asked myself, why do some people bounce back while others get stuck in their worries? I believe it's in the brain all along, because your brain can reprogram itself, it can rewire itself, and it adapts to whatever you repeatedly expose it to. And resilience isn't a personality trait. It is a skill that can be built, strengthened, and trained. And the difference between those who thrive and those who don't, it is the story they tell themselves about their setbacks. Because failure or setbacks, they don't define you. But the meaning you give it does. When we experience stress, fear, or anger, sometimes it can feel like these emotions will never let go, like they hold on forever. But according to Harvard-trained neuroscientist Dr. Jill Bolte-Taylor, on average, they last about 90 seconds. 90 seconds. After that, it's not the emotion that keeps us stuck, but it's us. It's the story we tell ourselves. Because we replay the failure and we predict the worst outcome. But if we can cut through the fear, we can actually rewire our brain and build resilience. And this isn't just some fluffy talk. This has been observed in real life. Researchers studying stroke patients found that even when one part of the brain was damaged, other areas could take over lost function if the patient trained consistently. Or you've probably heard about athletes who take ice baths every morning. Maybe it's even you. If you keep on practice to enduring discomfort, you learn to handle stress better. It's not that the people who jump into the cold water are not in shock. They are freezing. But they just keep on doing and doing it, and they just learn to handle stress better. Or think about resilience like that. Imagine you're walking through a dense forest. There's a clear path. It's easy. It's familiar. And then one day, a storm comes. The trees fall. The path disappears. Most of us panic because we desperately try to find our way back to the old trail. But what if, instead, you started cutting a new one. Resilience is not about going the old trail. It's about building a new one. And that's what happens in our brain. When I experienced these big challenges in my life, I didn't know anything about resilience or self-leadership, or at least I didn't have the words for it. But looking back, I unconsciously did 3 things that really helped me go through these tough times, and maybe they can help you too. First of all, I focused on what I could control. I couldn't control my mother's diagnosis, my boss's behavior, or my toxic work environment. But I could control my own reactions, how I responded to that. Secondly, I prioritized my physical well-being. When my body broke down before my karate championship, I learned the hard way that resilience isn't just mental, it's physical too. So not only regular exercise, but also sleep and mindful recovery really helped me go through these tough times. And thirdly, and most importantly, I adopted a growth mindset. I stopped seeing setbacks and started seeing them as lessons. So instead of always asking, why me? I began to ask, what can I learn from this? And these 3 things, they can be applied, whether in your personal life or in business. Because change in general is uncomfortable. It forces us to rethink what we know. I see this as a consultant guiding companies through transformations every day. So here's the real question. What meaning are you giving to the challenges in your life? And what new meaning could give you strength? Because here's the truth. You can't control what happens, but you can always control how you respond. And that response, that's what rewires your brain. That's what builds resilience, and that's what turns hardship into growth. At the beginning of this talk, I tore this piece of paper apart and I asked you, what do you do now? What do you do when life rips up your plan? That's the question life asks us every time we face a challenge. And now I want you to think of a challenge that you're facing right now, just one, and ask yourself, how can you grow from it? Because that's where resilience starts. And remember, you have faced uncertainty before, you have adapted before, but most importantly, you have survived before. So when life challenges you again, and I promise you it will, know this. Your brain is always listening. And the story you tell it, that's the one it will believe. So tell it a story of strength. Thanks.